Hello everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm going to be going over the top 10 cards for GLC from Twilight Masquerade, plus some honorable mentions. I have yet again done the cards ranked out of a scale of 0 through 10, or 1 through 10. I have a big list, a big board of all the cards from the set that I think are of note for GLC in a Google Sheet, and that should be linked down below in the description. So if you want to find more about cards that aren't necessarily on this list, then you can look at that in the description after you watch this. But for the top 10, actually have a little more than 10 because there are a few cards tied at a certain score. So I've included all those, although they are ranked by score, but if they're the same like score out of 10, they're pretty close in level. But um, yeah, and then there is a special honorable mention as well. Cards that are reprints, notably Enhanced Hammer is a reprint, which is, I guess, it's a good card, but it's not like an insanely good card. Um, it's pretty nice, but it's not being counted because it's already in the format. But let's hop right into the video. Oh, and before we hop into it, also subscribe because most of my viewers are not subscribed. I don't remember the number, but it is very low. Anyways, the first honorable mention here is Applin. I give it a question mark out of 10. I think in my list, I gave it like a 7 out of 10 or something, but yeah, also all these are from PokemonProxies.com, which I believe is made by Omnipoke or Goldilocks Jack of Omnipoke. So yeah, shout outs there. But Applin here, it doesn't actually matter what it does at all. All that matters is it's Applin and it's Dragon. This is the first Applin that's a Dragon type, but there have been Flapples and Appletons that are Dragon. Also, there is a Diplin that's Dragon. It's pretty bad. I don't remember exactly what it does. It's not the worst, but it's not particularly good. It's not a card I choose to play. But Applin here doesn't really do anything. Its attack, find a friend is all right, but the Flapple and the Appleton are pretty good. The one punishes special energy, which is pretty interesting, and then the one also will go ahead and the Flapple punishes abilities or does more for each ability. So they're both pretty interesting, pretty solid, and I think Applin with probably Flapple will be played. They could put in Appleton if you want. It does more damage in certain scenarios and against certain decks. But yeah. Then the next honorable mention, this is the first actual card on the list. This is Walking Wake. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Its first attack here isn't very good, but its second attack, Cleaving Wave here for Water colorless, 20 times multiplier up to 9. But you put up to 9 damage counters on this Pokemon. It does 20 for each damage counter you put on yourself in this way. So you can knock yourself out if you have already taken 40 damage or more. For like under certain conditions. So you can knock yourself out, which is nice. You obviously don't want to, but having the option is good. And if you even have 10 HP left, I believe you can just still do the full 180. This is pretty nice. It's pretty good damage output, to be honest. Maybe it should be up higher. I think Water has certain cards that have modular damage, which is really nice, meaning that you can push yourself up to one-shotting numbers and also damaging on literally anything or essentially everything. And also this will have relatively low HP after your attack. It is modular HP wise, and you can heal with your first attack, heal 20, deal 20 for 1 water. It's all right. And there's also Ancient, which I guess is good, but um, I don't think there's any other water ancient Pokemon in GLC. There is, of course, Walking Wake EX, but you can't play that. And I don't think there's anything else. If there is, and I'm forgetting it, then tell me down below. If it is, like, worth mentioning, but I don't think so. But Cleaving Wave, it's pretty solid. Just big damage, quite simply. And it's also not competing with another Walking Wake, as far as I'm aware of, so that's pretty good. Is this like a super good card? Is it a card that'll see play? Honestly, I think it might because its damage is really solid. I personally think, is it Cramorant? I don't think Cramorant's on this list, but that's like Snipe. But I think Kyogre actually outclasses both of them. The one that does 180 in Snipes, which is the same damage, but Snipe, one more energy, but a few different things going on. But Walking Wake, it's a pretty solid attacker. Of course, the low HP of like 40 or like 50 or 60 or whatever doesn't feel great, but I think it's a solid card. Next, the last honorable mention here. This is the second 6 out of 10 out of 3 I have, I believe. Zapdos here. It does 190 for lightning colors. This is really good, like really, really good. But of course, there's another really good Zapdos in the game right now that does 1 energy. I believe it does 80 if it swings into the active. It's a really solid Pokemon. This Zapdos is really nice for like doing big damage, but the big question is it worth playing over the other Zapdos? And I'm not really sure. It of course depends on what you're doing, how you're building your deck. But there was really a lot of value in this Zapdos, especially with Lightning having weaker high damage options. This is probably the best one. Zera Aura is honestly pretty solid, pretty underrated. Thunderous is pretty solid as well. It damages itself. It has some pretty big downsides, but it has big upside. It's a weird card. But Zapdos can just do big damage, and then you do discard all the energy, and you have 2 retreat costs, so that's a little awkward. Overall, though, I think it's a pretty good card. Obviously, it is able to, take one shots on pretty much every Pokemon in the format, and it does hit 190, which is enough to one shot Torterra. Of course, they could have damage or health buffs, but yeah, it's still really solid. Again, kind of similar to Walking Wake, except instead this time it's competing with other Zapdoses, which is actually a really big deal. But yeah, that is taken into account with these cards. Next, we got number 10, Ting-Lu. There's another good Ting-Lu, but I think this card's really good. Also, at this point, I'm going to say there's 3 types, in my opinion, that are getting massive buffs. Lightning is getting some buffs. There's Zapdos, and there's one other card, but then Fighting Dragon, and then one other type, which we'll get to. But mostly Fighting and Dragon are getting a ton of buffs. Um, Actually, yeah, and Grass, I'll say that. It's probably in the thumbnail. And they're getting a ton of buffs. Fighting's getting, arguably, in my opinion, the best buffs because this card's solid. There's a bunch of like really solid fighting Pokemon. But Ground Crack here, it does 30 for 1 fighting, which obviously isn't that good. Also, are really insane, but in my opinion. But Ground Crack, if a stadium's in play, this attack does 30. Well, you discard it, and then it does 30 to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. You do actually discard the stadium afterwards. So if the stadium is the bench protecting stadium, there's 2. But if it's one of those, you won't do the bench damage. But that's pretty niche. So yeah, you go ahead, do 30 to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. And if you do have damage buffs, notably Martial Arts Dojo, which you might want to play, you probably will actually, then you go ahead and do the extra damage to, I think it's just the active. I honestly don't remember, but I'm pretty sure it is. And then you do 30 to spread to each, which is like really good, especially looking at the fighting type of deck. Of course, there are a few good stadiums, Martial Arts Dojo. There's obviously a lot of just good stadiums in the format. Although, of course, if it's something that an effect you want in play, he'll discard it. So that's not really what you're looking to do. But then you're able to go ahead and use Berkeley Hill as well. That one's like super good. And then also you can go ahead and discard a stadium of your opponent's that they might want. It could be, I don't know. There are lots of stadiums that people play, like Stormy Mountains, like Berkeley Hill, but you can't use it. So yeah, being able to get rid of that is nice. And of course, just the 30 spread, really solid. Just a really good amount of damage across the board, and a lot of types don't have bench barrier, and so it's really nice. And if you do run Silent Lab, there we go. I was blanking on the name. Silent Lab, which will turn off. That will turn off like Manaphy or Mew or Mr. Mime or whatever. A bench barrier Pokemon, and then it will work because the stadium's in play, I believe, before dealing damage. And so, as I said, this is a translation, so it could technically be wrong, but it doesn't matter too much to the order. But it's pretty solid, and the reason I like this so much is because it's really good with the Hitmon, like, what's the deck called? Hitmon spread? I don't know, the Hitmon top deck with fighting, which I think is really commonly played. I don't remember exactly how much. I think it's 60 doll, $30. I don't know, but this Tinglu is really good, and it's just really good. So I believe the Hitmonlee is Hitmon top is $60 and Hitmonlee is 90 snipe, I think. But anyway, Tinglu is really solid. I think that I don't know. I'm just a really big fan of this card. I haven't heard much talk about this. I haven't been listening to a ton of GLC stuff, but I've heard some stuff, and I haven't really heard a ton about this card. There is another Tinglu that is good, though. I'll admit that 100%, which is what's it? There's a it does like 220. It's really powerful. You can't attack if you have damage counters on it, so that's a bit of a like an issue. But it's like it's kind of weird. I don't know which one's better. I think I like. I don't know. I think this one's better. I think most people probably think the other one's better, but I like this card. And I'm actually just checking on my phone separately. Hitmontop does it does 60 to everything. So that's pretty interesting. But it is like 3 turns, so I think this energy is nice though. Number 9, we've got Hawlucha. This one is really good. Hawlucha is not like super great in fighting, so it's a nice easy include. and it does 50. But if you have more, if you're essentially down on prizes, then you are able to do 90 more, which is going to be 140 for 2 fighting, which is just really solid. I think this is the same damage as Chiyu, which is pretty good. I think this has less HP, but it's really nice, right? It's just really good damage output, and it's relatively cheap. So I think this Hawlucha is just a really nice, solid include. Not a super broken card, but just really solid, especially in fighting, which it does have some decent attackers, but I think Hawlucha is a really nice addition to that like more basic focused deck. And you just get energy onto it. Energy is a little awkward because there's great energy acceleration, but Hawlucha I think it's just a solid Pokemon. Not too much to say about it, but yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It just does good damage. If you're down, of course, you don't necessarily want to be getting down, but because you might not have great recovery options because you don't have like a great, like you already said, support Pokemon, but you can use Hawlucha here. If you do get down, especially if you are like the spread-based build with the Hitmons and with the Tinglu, then you are down some, and that's not a massive issue. Number 8, we got Diplin. This is a grass Pokemon, really interesting. Its ability Festival Lead, which is if Festival Grounds is in play. It's a stadium. I think it like cures special conditions. It doesn't really matter. It's not that good, but you need a certain stadium in play. And this Pokemon may use an attack it has twice. Keep in mind, this doesn't use TMs twice. It would need to be the same attack, I guess. I don't think any of the Pokemon with this ability have multiple attacks. But if the first attack knocks out your opponent's active, they may you may attack again after they choose a new act. It's the way it always works. So, and then you have Do the Wave. It does 20 for each of your bench Pokemon. This can obviously do up to 100, which is essentially 200 or 100 to 2 different Pokemon, which is really nice. Of course, your opponent will probably try to send up a Pokemon that you'll hit into with the second attack that you either won't knock out or that just doesn't do too much for you, but it's still pretty nice. And if it's just 200 for one grass, if that's the worst that it is, it's still really good. Not necessarily 200, right? You do need a full bench, but even if it's like 160, which is still really good. Of course, ADHP is a little low. Aren't any other grass Diplins now, or any grass Diplins. This card's not out. And I will say, there is a grass Diplin line and a dragon Diplin line in the set. So if some of you are confused about that, there is a Diplin line of each type. So yeah, this is pretty solid though. I think it's just like really powerful. Of course, if you don't have the stadium, Do the Wave is going to be like 100 for one grass, probably, which honestly isn't that bad. It's not like amazing, but it's actually it's pretty solid. Again, not broken, but it's pretty decent, especially for that like a lower energy grass deck. There's really two styles of grass, and yeah, I think Diplin's just a really solid Pokemon. I will talk about this a little more later on, so make sure you remember it, but I think it's really solid. Arguably should be up higher, the card that you'd pair with it, which I will say for those of you who know, it is the Thwackey, which if you don't know, I'll talk to you about it, but maybe I should lower Thwackey, raise up Diplin, but I think together they're a really solid combo. But Diplin is on its own just a really solid Pokemon. Of course, the double attack you do in this stadium can be lost, vacuumed, or just it'll get discarded pretty commonly, but still like that turn and double attack's really nice. And as just a regular attack, it's pretty solid. I think it's a really nice include in grass, specifically the single like energy attachment build, but you could do it in the multi-energy attachment build, as I'll talk about later. Next, number 7, we got a fighting Pokemon for fighting darkness. No, sorry, for fighting fighting, it does 70 with Oki Punchy. Great ability name there, 130 HP as well. I don't remember if this is the official translation, but Adrenaline Power, one string your turn. What? I don't know why it says one string your turn, but if this Pokemon has any darkness energy attached to it, it gets 100 more HP and is attached to 100 more damage to your opponent's active. This, I believe, does work with TMs, but probably not going to matter because if you know what the TMs are, there's the one that just does like 280, and then that's it. Like the rest are all bench damage or no damage. So, but then you're doing 170 for fighting, but you do need a darkness on, which is a little weird because that can be obviously a basic darkness, which is a little awkward now. Fighting a darkness 170 and you do have 230, which is not terrible if you just look at it like that, but not great. And then if you look at it, if you attach an Aurora energy or Rainbow energy or Prism energy or Luminous energy, I guess would work, then you're able to use this for that will pay both the fighting and be a darkness because the way they're worded. I think all of them are worded the same way. I know the newer ones are worded and a bit more clearly. And I don't know if there's another special energy like it, but like I don't know if the unit or blend energies cover this. I think the unit might. I don't remember which is which to be honest, but it doesn't really matter. You have Prism, Rainbow, Aurora, and all those. So Wookiee Bungee here that will be doing 170 for essentially two, maybe three, and then you have 230 HP, just simply a really great stat line. Not too much to say about this Pokemon. The energy type, like the darkness, is a little awkward, but I'm still not very worried about this. In standard, I think it'll be okay. In GLC, I think it's going to be absolutely insane. Yeah. Oh, also, I guess I didn't say this. GLC, for those of you who don't know, I should have said this earlier, but it's monotype, singleton. So monotype, only one type, one of every card, and no multi-prizers, no rule box cards, and or Apex or Prism Star Stadiums. Rule box Pokemon. Rule box cards isn't an official term as far as I'm aware, but yeah, Okie dokie, just really great raw stats. Next, number 6, we got Morpeko. This one's kind of weird. I don't really know what to think about this one. So for those of you who don't know, Lightning, well, one, that's the type I'm the most familiar with. But two, its drawn in situations really weird. You have Zebstrika, which is just so good, in my opinion. I think it's probably my favorite draw Pokemon in the format. It is like super aggressive and super it's like just the most turbo engine in the game, probably, because you discard your hand draw 4, but it draws lots of cards, and it's pretty good. But then you have Electrode, which is draw till 4, the second best option. It's much worse. People often just don't play it. Sometimes they do, but it's much worse. So you are looking for like additions to your engine. And Morpeko kind of is that. It says when it's during your turn, you can look at the top card of your deck and you can discard it. This is one, good for discarding things in certain scenarios. Although that's not super great with Lightning. Of course, you could discard Lightning energies, basic Lightning energies for Flaffy, Electric, and then Flaffy and Electric, which are like the same, and I guess other scenarios as well. There are certain times when you want to have the top card of your deck in the discard, but also it just allows you to churn through your deck faster, especially like you could be running. There are a lot of different builds of Lightning or different ways to play it, some of which definitely don't want to be discarding random cards from your deck. Notably, like the spread deck probably doesn't really want to be doing that, but if you're running a turbo build or if you're running a control build, then this could be nice just discard. And then of course you get to like essentially you kind of know what's on top of your deck. It's pretty nice. Then pick and patch, attach up to 2 basic energies from your discard pile to your Pokemon any way you like. To me, this is really nice because it can power up Raikou Amazing Rare. I mean, it's pretty simple. Raikou Amazing Rare is a really good card. The Amazing Rares are all really good. The one got banned. There's 2 that are really good, I guess, and that's Kyogre and Raikou. Kyogre got banned, but Raikou is Lightning. It's not banned. It's really, really good, and Morpeko can power it up, and there's a really solid way to do that. You could use Team Turbo Energized. You can use this. They're pretty similar, and I think Morpeko's really nice. Arguably, this should be a little lower. I originally had this much lower, and then I'm like got really hyped on it. Honestly, after this video, so I have that big board down below in the description. I will be constantly changing the ranking, so it might be lower. I think you might want it a little lower, but it's still pretty solid for being able to power up your Pokemon. And it's just like nice and versatile. It's a pretty versatile Pokemon that I think it just has really solid value. Not like broken, not super good, not really great in any scenario, but for the most part, it's pretty good. Late game, you can use this to like essentially get hopefully closer to your outs. So I think it's just a pretty solid Pokemon. Next, number 5, we have Landa's Assistant. This is a supporter, put up to 3 in any kind of combination of Pokemon that don't have a rule box and basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. This is the difference between Super Rod and Ordinary Rod, except those are items to your deck. This versus Clara is a they are supporters and to your hand. Of course, this does not get back rule box Pokemon. Standard is much, much worse, but in GLC, it doesn't really matter. Is this better than Clara or worse? I don't know. It's personal preference, but it's just pretty solid. I mean, Clara is really good. Not like broken. I don't know. Clara's pretty good. And so a lot of assistance I think will also be good. You're looking at it specifically in decks like, as I said, I mentioned water earlier, where you have energy acceleration, Frostmoth, Excalibur, potentially Blastoise, whatever you want, some freely, right? And then you go ahead and just want lots of energies, although you will sometimes want Pokemon, and Lan's Assistance will be really nice for that. So I think Lan's Assistance, really solid card. Honestly, in a lot of different decks. comparing it to Clara, it's pretty similar, but I do think it's a pretty good card. Next, number 4, we got ourselves another 8 out of 10 card, Hisuian Arcanine. This card, I think, is super underrated for GLC, although I don't know. I don't know how much people have been saying about this. But 130. Also, there is a Hisuian Arcanine that's like firefighting, or it's fighting, but it uses firefighting energy, and it's like pretty good. But I think this one's better. Fighting has not good energy acceleration. It's not the worst. It's like, actually, is it the worst? It might be the worst. It's not non-existent, but it's not very good because it's like stage twos. So stage twos that accelerate a little bit of energy, not all your energy. So Hisuian Arcanine though is free. Your second attack is not free, but it's bad. Proud Fangs though, if your bench Pokemon have any damage counters on this, it does 120. Otherwise it would just do 30, but 120 for free is really solid, especially with Throw. I think it's a really interesting Pokemon. Does more for your bench for bench damage. It does, I think, 120. It's similar to this, but it's basic, but it's multiple energies. I think there are other cards like it, but I think this is a really solid concept to build around, and it's a free attacker, meaning that you can attach energy other places, or you can attack with this. You can just like manually retreat, or just don't have energy. There is a free Hisuian Arcanine as well. That's like a weird card. If you have no cards in hand, it's really good. And it was like pretty solid and standard, but GLC, it's just so difficult to use. Specifically use and then actually do anything after you have no cards in hand. But I think Hisuian Arcanine here is like a really, really solid Pokemon that I think Fighting type will love, especially because it is a weaker type in the game. Number 3, though, we got Thwackey. Bang, bang, drum. When starting your turn, if your active Pokemon has the Festival Elite ability, you may search your deck for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. Quite frankly, there's two things about this. One, this is so good as an engine. Grass's engine situation has been like pretty bad, not terrible. I don't know, it's pretty bad. You obviously have like there's Roserade, which is on play search, which is good, but it's not broken. I mean, it's one turn, right? So it's not really broken. You can use it a few times potentially, but it's pretty hard to loop, and it's not consistent. But then you also, of course, have like Grottle. You have like Energy Search, Pokemon Search. So you have options, but they're not just general draw cards. Thwackey, though, is that. Of course, there's a few things to say about this. One, you need that Diplin in the active. That is the only Pokemon you can have in the active so far. And so you need that, and that's a little awkward. You need to be playing this with the Diplin. But with the Diplin, it's so good. And then, of course, you are always probably running then Rillaboom. There's a new Rillaboom. It's all right. It's not bad, but there's a grass Voltage Beat Rillaboom that accelerates grass energy from the deck. That card is so good, and I think this is the best Thwackey, and I think it adds a layer of depth to the deck. You add this, you add Diplin as like a 1/1 line. They're all 1/1 lines, but you add it as just like a 1/1 line that functions a little differently than the rest of the deck, or maybe Rillaboom is that different aspect with the energy acceleration, or maybe you don't run Rillaboom, but I feel like you probably do. But then all of a sudden you have this engine. It's not a consistent engine, not really, but it's about as good. It's probably better than Roserade, as you can probably use it a few times during the game, and it has some value at different points. I think Thwackey's pretty good here, especially with Grass being a type that just has a weak engine in terms of like just regular draw engine. This isn't a great draw engine, but it could do. You could go ahead with Diplin and maybe tank it up with a Luxurious Cape, put up to 180, I think. I think it had 80, and hopefully tank a hit. You might not tank a hit, but you might. You could do Cricketune as well. You're up to 220. That tanks a hit. Of course, you are giving up 2 prizes. It is kind of sketchy, but if it tanks a hit, then you can go ahead and you're just set with Thwackey. So, I think that's a pretty interesting concept, and I think this could be add another layer to Grass that is really nice. Maybe it's a win more card, but I honestly think it's not. I think it's just so good. Also, in order to get that stadium festival, whatever, um, festival grounds, I think this will be nice. A really great way to do that. There are ways to search stadiums, but they're kind of sketchy. Next, number 2, we got Tatsugiri. Track customers, really solid ability. Dragon Pokemon with 1 retreat, which is nice. If it's in the active, you may look at the top 6, reveal a supporter you find there, put it into your hand, then shuffle the other cards back into your deck. This is just a really solid card. Obviously, it lets you get supporters, which are really nice, especially Guzman Hala, so good for Dragon type decks, which are pretty reliant on special energy, like really reliant on special energy. So I think Tatsugiri is just a really, really good card because I mean, it's just good, right? Getting supported is nice. Dragon's Engine's not the best. It's kind of weird The one downside to this card, which isn't even that bad, is that Dragon Knight gets a supporter of return, so they kind of overlap, and it's kind of weird. But one, you could run a different Dragon Knight, because right now you pretty much have to run the Dragon Knight that gets supporters, because it's by far like the best engine card for like getting for drawing cards that aren't just like Pokemon, because there's Skibite, and there's Regidraco as well, which is it's okay, a decent attacker. Is its ability good? It's okay, but Tashigiri's ability is so good. I think in any other type this would be super good. Maybe not Psychic, but maybe not Metal because Jirachi is also really good. But Tashigiri is so good. I think it's gonna make Dragon a lot better. As I said with Dragon Knight, you kind of want that. I don't think you want to cut it. There are certain other Dragon Knights though, as I said, that are really good, but I think Tatsugiri is just really good. You won't always have Dragonite in play, and it'll just help you in a ton of different scenarios. You could even run Lieutenant Surge's strategy to double supporter. There are some different things, but I think this is really, really good. And then number one, it's Dracoloak. Speaking of lack of powerful engines in Dragon type, Dracoloak is that. It's a 10 out of 10 card. Tatsugiri 9 out of 10, which is really solid. But Dracoloak a 10 out of 10. This is like just really good. Kind of broken in GLC. It's gonna honestly kind of rework the Dragon type. And I don't know if this is good. I guess it's not good, but it's interesting to note there isn't even a Dragapult you can play in Dragon decks, so you can't even evolve this. But your ability Telling Spirit, once during your turn, you can look at the top two, put one into your deck, or top two cards of your deck, put one to your hand, one back on the bottom of your deck. So that's pretty good. Also, 70 for 2 is not bad, but it's not that good. But actually, no, 70 for 2 is pretty solid, but you have 90 HP, which is like the perfect amount, one retreat, which is pretty good. And obviously, it's just a really solid ability on a type that has terrible draw. It's not the worst, but it needs as much help as it can get as well, because you're often navigating weird scenarios where you just don't have all the stuff you want with Dragon, because you have a weird energy typing and you have just a weirder cast of Pokemon. You're looking at Pokemon like Garchomp, which probably isn't in play because you don't want it just sitting in play. You want to play at the turn that you need it, and you have I'm speaking of the Garchomp that is invincible the turn you play it. Then you have the I don't know. There's the Drampa, I think. There we go. The Drampa, and then you need like a stadium, or you need certain things to get damage in play, and you got all these weird scenarios. They aren't like absurd, but kind of weird, kind of difficult to navigate, especially at the end of the game. Draco's just really good. It gets good all the time. Pidgeotto doesn't see a ton of play in colorless, but that's because colorless has like the best draw engine in the game with Babel, Squovit, Pidgeotto, Oranguru, the other Oranguru, and of course Chinchino, and Dracoloak it's really good, right? It's going to make Dragon much better. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you didn't, consider liking and subscribing and hitting the bell, and comment down below your thoughts on what cards you're most excited to play from this set and ones I didn't mention. And as I said, you can look down below the Google Sheet to look at all the other cards and tell me if I missed any, because I definitely might have. But I hope you enjoyed, and as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.